Afternoon and good evening. I'm Daniel Callingard. I'm Managing Director of the Open Society University Network, OSUN, based at Bard. And I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Oh, go ahead, Sasha.
No, please, Bonnie.
I'm Bonnie Goad. I'm also at Bard College, and I'm the Director of OSUN Program Development and Communications.
And I'm Sasha Stokovic at Central European University, Yehuda Elkana Center for Higher Education, and I work for the OSUN Secretariat at CEU.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your interest in OSUN's Call for Concepts. I will give a quick overview, and then I'm sure there will be plenty of questions. Can you all see the slides? Okay, now we are here. Okay. So this is a call for concepts, inviting input from throughout our network. And the purpose is to foster collaboration between partner institutions. And we're looking for collaborations that support one of OSUN's key priorities, that is integrating curricula, teaching, and research across institutions, expanding civic engagement, or increasing access to higher education. We are focused on a range of areas of collaboration. There are academic themes on democratic practice, sustainability, inequalities, human rights, arts and society, global public health, and I neglected to add here, global justice. And we also support collaborations to increase engagement, such as liberal arts pedagogy, teacher education, early college and preparatory programs, micro colleges, refugee education, and civic education and civic engagement. We have asked partner institutions to organize their own internal review process as a way to give initial feedback on concepts and to align the concepts with the institution's priorities. Some have set up ad hoc committees to give feedback on concepts and to indicate to OSUN which ones the institution thinks best meet priorities. In other cases, we may get concepts directly from the authors, which is fine, and we will contact institutional leadership and just ask for their feedback. We will be opening an online portal for submissions on December 1st, and the deadline for concepts is December 15th. This is the first phase in a two-phase process of initial concepts. There is a management committee of OSUN which will review the concepts, select some of them for further development, and if you're selected, you would be invited to develop a full proposal and a detailed budget. And that review will happen early in the next calendar year. And this is a timeline for those who are invited to develop full proposals to receive grants by the summer, next summer, for programs to start with a new academic year in September 2021. We're looking for concepts that are one page or less. And I know it can be challenging to distill your ideas into one page. Keep in mind, we are expecting a large number of submissions. So there'll be quite a lot for the OSUN Management Committee to go through. And that's why we are encouraging you to be succinct, get to the point, and try to convey, the key aspects of your project idea. And we're looking specifically for the purpose of what you're proposing and why your program is needed, a clear articulation of what your objectives are and what you expect to come out of your project, a brief summary of the activities. And so we know if you're invited to submit a full proposal, you'll have a lot more to say. Here in the concept, we just want some sense of the scope of what you plan to do and what kinds of activities. And then we'd like you to address specifically how your program will increase collaboration among network partners. And again, the core element in everything we're looking for is building partnerships and collaborations across OSUN institutions. We're also asking at this stage for an estimated budget total. And it can be, the range is very wide. In OSUN programs supported thus far, they range from $20,000 to $1 million. So it's a big range. And we simply want, again, some sense of the scope of what you are planning. Let me say a couple words about the selection criteria. There are 3 key criteria, and the OSUN Management Committee will be looking for all 3 in your concept. The first is we're looking for concepts that will advance OSUN priorities. Again, integrating curricula, teaching and research across institutions, expanding civic engagement, or increasing access to higher education. Second, we're looking for concepts that will build or strengthen sustainable partnerships. So it's not simply a question of putting the names of different institutions on your concepts. We really want some project that will give each partner substantive input in developing and carrying out the project, and a partnership that can be sustained over time. So as an example, we've supported the development of new network courses, which were jointly developed by faculty at different institutions. At the concept phase, and certainly by the time it gets to the proposal, we're looking for clear indication that there's student demand for these courses at different campuses and that they will be integrated into the curriculum. And I should add that we are particularly focused on partnerships with institutions in the Global South. And the third criteria is that we're looking for concepts that will produce significant value. And at a minimum, that means having clearly defined objectives and outcomes that are aligned with OSUN's vision. What that means in practice can vary. It can be a significant innovation in one way or another. It can be about advancing learning or knowledge creation related to one of the academic themes. It could be about expanding the network's geographic reach or demographic diversity. But in one way or another, we're looking for something that adds to what you and your institutions are already doing. And because this is all about partnerships, we encourage you to visit the website, which is the full title, opensocietyuniversitynetwork.org. You can see all the partner institutions listed, and you can also see brief descriptions of the various programs that have started thus far, and that will give you a sense of the kinds of programs that OSUN is interested in supporting. So that's the overview. I invite your questions. Feel free to throw them in chat or jump in. Because there's so many of you, I can't see everyone on the screen. So you can wave, I might see you. And if not, I'd say just jump in. So let me start with Tom Selwyn.
Thank you very much, Daniel. One question I have is about the civic engagement.
Yes.
Are we right in thinking that any of our OSUN partners can then engage with civic organizations that are obviously, or more or less obviously, not part of the OSUN network at the moment. So the link will be between the OSUN partner and the civic societies with whom we work. Is that a correct understanding?
Let me explain it this way. I agree that civic engagement projects by their very nature will bring your institution into contact and developing activities and programs with the community, however that's defined. For the network programs, we're looking for civic engagement that is collaborative between OSUN institutions. In other words, among the partners, several of them have very robust civic engagement programs of their own. What OSUN supports is the collaboration between the OSUN institutions on civic engagement. Probably Bonnie can give a couple of examples, but basically learning from each other how to do civic engagement better as a way. I don't know, Bonnie, if you have.
Yeah, I've just thrown a couple of examples of projects that are under development right now with OSUN. One is, for example, engage research, and how do we consider ways for OSUN institutions to collaborate in engage research among faculty with their community partners. Looking at micro-credentialing for a certificate in civic engagement across different OSUN institutions, and how we can develop that collaboratively and learn from each other's expertise, even when we're working with community organizations. So those are two of the many different ways that OSUN institutions can collaborate and engage deeply with their own community. So we encourage you to think outside of the box about how you might utilize each other's experience, expertise, and build on what you already have going on.
So just to be absolutely clear, I mean, we at SOAS, for example, have very good relations and have had for a decade or 15 years or so with various civic organizations in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, including the Center for Cultural Heritage Preservation, for example. Now, those links, as I understand from what you say, are to be developed or can be developed, or it would be suitable and appropriate in your OSUN view for these links to be developed in partnership with our academic colleagues in other OSUN partners. Is that correct?
That absolutely could be correct. It could be enhancing something that's already in place, or it could be bringing in new folks, as long as it is involving at least one or more additional OSUN institutions in the project.
Thank you.
Yeah. Christopher?
I have a question about the September starting line. Many of the global partnerships that I'm trying to link together, are really urgent in the first 9 months of the year. One of the reasons is that we're all trying to land at COP26 in Glasgow, my hometown, where I know a lot of Adam Smith scholars, and I also know the Attenborough family, who are obviously quite influential on green topics. But essentially, if the world is going to come back from COVID, if community development is to start again, so many things need to happen in these 9 months before September. So how do you see that side of things?
With the volume of concepts that we expect to get, and it's a very deliberative process, and it's also iterative process that in many cases, even at the concept stage, the committee might say, we like parts of the idea, but we would encourage you to rethink some other parts, or connect with, we might make introductions to certain partners who share their ideas. It's not meant to be a rapid response mechanism. This is really trying to build partnerships that will last over time. on rare occasions, there have been some initiatives, or really a couple initiatives, that were more time sensitive and they were given priority attention. But again, it's not a rapid response. It's just not set up for that.
Could I just ask one secondary question? I mean, there are other parts of everything that George Soros brings together, like the various young economist networks, etc. And obviously, to the extent that economists have a positive impact, they need to be trying to, help Biden or help turn around, let's say, the American view of system design. So there are parts of, I suggest, of the wider whole, which their iterations are happening right now, kind of thing. So how does the education side and the other system side of everything that George Soros aims to invest in connect together?
Well, I should say the decisions are made collaboratively between representatives of the Central European University, Bard College, and the Open Society Foundations. So the foundations are very involved throughout the whole process. And also in many cases, we have connected faculty members with, say, the foundation's justice program or the foundation's efforts with refugees. And so there are links, and we are a network, and we think and act like a network. So much of what we do is just sort of connecting faculty members, staff, foundation people who are grappling with the same or similar issues. Lots of questions in the chat I want to get to. And actually, Mohira, why don't you jump in and I'll get to the chat questions.
Thank you. So I wrote one question in the chat about the duration of the projects, and the other is the internal initial review process. I'm based in the American University of Central Asia in Bishkek. Who is my contact point for that? Is this the newly created development office? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your case, it's the I think vice president for development.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Nurgul, who is in the call, can answer this for AUCA if there is a process and who.
Yeah.
Nurgul, whoever is here, she'll write to you, or she'll.
Okay.
We can talk about it. There was an announcement, and there is a committee at the UCA which will be reviewing.
Yeah. And then, in answer to your question about the duration, the foundation is supporting virtually all of the programs for 1 year initially. But that said, we encourage you to think bigger and longer term. So many of the projects are conceived as, say, 3-year programs, which take time to build. And just as an approach, the foundation wants to see, we're all interested to see that bigger vision, what you would like to build over time. And then if it makes it all the way through the proposal review, it will be initial funding for 1 year as a way to see how it works in practice before the foundation decides on follow-on.
Yeah, so our idea is to launch a master track in activism as research and artistic practice.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be something that is not over in 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years would be like the first cycle of the master program.
Yeah. And indeed, yeah, as I sort of mentioned in the summary, we're looking for sustainable partnerships, and we know you don't build a sustainable partnership in 1 year. It's the let's say the foundation being cautious and it wants to see how things play out in the first year and have a good indication that there is, there's student demand where these are student programs involving students, that there is real potential to build those partnerships more strongly over time.
Thank you.
Nurgul had, let's see, for example, oh yes, thank you. Nurgul mentioned that there are other calls already out, specifically on human rights and the arts, their faculty grants, their applications for research support for faculty pursuing projects at the intersection of human rights and the arts. There are also separate calls for student-led initiatives, civic engagement initiatives. There's quite a lot out there, and this call is really opportunity to pitch new ideas for entirely new projects.
Can I just add to that so that folks are clear? So some of the calls you're seeing, for example, from human rights and civic engagement for faculty and for students are OSUN funded projects, and part of their project are these smaller grants within their project. So know that that is a possibility as you conceive your ideas, that there might be smaller components that you could add to your proposal.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes, we can make the overview slides available after the call. Question about the academic themes. Sustainability is one of the themes. Can it be related to legal aspects of sustainable development? Yes. The themes are understood very broadly, and in general, we are open to educational programs, research, and so on that is consistent with the broad mission and vision of the Open Society University Network. So supporting ideas of critical thinking, addressing global problems collaboratively, etc. As examples, among existing programs, we have a humanities network and we have an experimental humanities network, even though humanities literally is not one of the academic themes, but obviously it is very consistent with everything we're doing. Working on legal aspects of sustainable development, I think is certainly related to the sustainability theme. Other questions? Yes, Safet?
Thank you very much, Daniel. Good afternoon from London. I'm also related to SOAS. And I was wondering, on the one hand, so you mentioned now, I thought this was the first year for these particular programs, but apparently not, because you mentioned the existing ones, and I've just looked at the experimental humanities collaborative network, so that's great. It would be, I think, very useful for us to be able to understand the second part of this application process, should the concepts go ahead, be given a green light, what that process entails, simply in terms of designing the concept itself. Perhaps either is there a list of successful projects, current programs that are running, or are there select ones?
Yeah, and if you go to the website, everything described there is it's a new program, and it's either up and running or just waiting for the final sign off on the funding to get started. But to give you the timeline, George Soros announced the launch of the Open Society University Network in January. And in many ways, we've had to put it together in practice very quickly. And also about 6 weeks after the announcement, COVID hit and universities shut. So even with our initial plans, everything had to pivot to the new online world. So what happened in practice is the Central European University and Bard College, as the founding members, had already started to develop some program concepts. And much of the network is not just inspired by what CEU and BARD have done, but really builds off partnerships, collaborative programs that have been running for many years. So in a sense, our faculty members were already thinking about, okay, what is the next stage of the kinds of collaborations that we envision? And then the thinking was also, how do we build those partnerships to this very broad network with institutions that are, may have had some collaborations, but really building new partnerships. And so the programs that you see listed on the website were developed even starting before the announcement of the network. And this is really the first opportunity to open up a call for the entire network to send in new concepts. After the management committee reviews concepts and it picks ones that look to have the most potential to build the kind of partnerships that will strengthen the network and will advance the priorities as are laid out, then the committee will invite select applicants to develop a full proposal. And the proposal will have specific questions, but let's say pretty predictable questions for, for those who've probably, all of you, written many applications before. So really defining what is the need for the project, as in, it's not, hopefully, we know it's interesting, it will add value, but what is really needed here? And then more on the partnerships, to the level of detail at a proposal phase. We want to know, who exactly are you working with? What is each lead at the different institutions? What is each person contributing? What is sort of the experience that you're building on? Where is the value added to what your institutions are already doing? Those kinds of questions going into much detail, and then a detailed budget. As I mentioned, it is often an iterative process. So, we're looking for OSUN Secretariat staff, and under the guidance of the committee, we're looking to build partnerships, to strengthen partnerships, to make new connections, to give feedback on sort of shaping ideas in ways that we think will fit best within the network and that will thrive within the network.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very useful.
Sure. Other questions? Let's see. Network connect. Yes, so some questions in the chat. Explain the parts of the network that connect earlier grades than university. So we have programs, BARD has a network of early colleges that have been running for many years. The Central European University has run preparatory programs primarily because it's a graduate institution, to expand access to graduate education. And the emphasis is really on the sort of pre-college, pre-university programs, is really about expanding access. So in many cases, and there's similar programs at several institutions. There may be cases where they're students with very strong potential, but English is not their first language, and their English language skills aren't at the level needed to do a full bachelor's program in English. Or you know, further support in study skills. So whatever those who show the potential but haven't had the schooling that would fully prepare them for study at the American University of Central Asia or at Bard or other network institutions, we want to give them the support they need to have those opportunities. I should say a word about building partnerships, or a few words, because these are questions that have come up in other information sessions, and I think it's related to some of the questions in the chat. In some cases, you may have already spoken to your counterpart at Birkbeck, SOAS, AUCA, and have, you know, very specific partnerships in mind. And if so, absolutely include that in the concept. In other cases, you may have an idea and know, oh, there's similar work being done at these other institutions. Again, you can mention that as a plan, a potential. I haven't spoken to them yet, but I know there's similar programs or people with similar research interests at these institutions. It is also possible to submit a concept that doesn't specify the partnerships. And on occasion, the management committee has supported those kinds of concepts if they are conceived as partnerships. In other words, sometimes we've seen concepts that are very compelling, but really look like one person's research project. And that's not part of building a network. In other cases, it can, you know, even without specifying partners, have a concept and an idea that really needs to be developed in a collaborative way, and that the secretariat or the management committee can see this will be of interest at 2 or 3 other places. And so we will support it in going forward. At this point, you know, many people in the network have expressed interest in sort of finding their counterparts out there, and we're all, you know, be very candid, we're all learning how to do this now. You know, this is still a very new network. We don't have a central directory with every faculty member's interests. We understand in some cases, I mean, sometimes the best thing you can do is really just look at the websites. Sustainability issues, you know, who's there at the environmental studies departments at these universities, what are they researching, and so on. We have also set up a Google group called OSUN Connects, and this is really a forum for those of you who are developing concepts, who are looking for partners. This is the place to go, and there are already, let's say, conversations going on some of the themes, like on human rights and on environmental studies, but others, and we encourage you to go there and just say, I'm interested in this. Who else is out there that has a similar interest? Questions, let's see, are there going to be new calls? We may have another call in the spring, but this is the big call, and it's likely to be an annual call going forward. Other questions? Can a collaboration be between 2 teachers from 2 partner institutions? Yes. The collaboration can be, yeah, say, pretty much any scope, any level. provided there are 2 or more partner institutions involved. So we've had, a few projects that are simply between BARD and CEU, or sometimes one of us and Al-Quds BARD. Mostly programs are developed by faculty, but we invite staff, we invite administrators. We'd be happy to see proposals from students as well.
If I can add here, if the question is about whether 2 colleagues from 2 separate institutions want to do a research project together, then probably this project will be less relevant because it does not involve institutional collaboration. So if your project is not limited to your own academic interests, to just one course that you teach, or to doing a research project together, then you do need to think in broader terms. So between 2 institutions is fine. Between only 2 individuals who happen to come from 2 institutions doing something that benefits these 2 individuals, or perhaps produces a joint publication, is less likely to be of interest.
Excuse me, this was my question. So may I have a follow-up question?
Of course,
Please.
When you say between 2 partner institutions, do you mean the entire institution, like for instance, BARD and CEU, or is it, let's say, a certain program in BARD and a certain program in CEU or other institutes? So for instance, legal studies program in one university and legal studies program in another university.
Absolutely, collaboration between programs is fine. There is an aspect here of institutional support for actually administering the project, in a sense of being able to receive and administer and report on a grant from the Open Society Foundation. So for that, there has to be basic institutional agreement to host, to be a home for your project. But yes, again, as I said, as long as the collaboration is focused on benefiting programs, anything beyond just the level of one individual scholar or teacher at one institution.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Safed?
Thank you very much. Everything is much clearer after this session. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy about this OSUN Connect Google group, which will be really useful, especially if we sort of go to the second stage with our concept. I'm wondering, in terms of the already successful projects in the past, are they projects, for the most part, when you think generally about these projects, that focus on one sort of type of activity, say a micro college, or can they have different pathways in terms of sort of 2 or 3 strong activities that they contribute as a network?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You'll see it's, I think, a very broad range of types of activity. So some are platforms for collaborative research. Much of actually the research programs or research activities are integrated in programs with curriculum development, with educational components. There are some that are very focused on pedagogical methods or teacher education. There's a program of refugee micro colleges, which it's quite distinct because it is dealing with very distinct challenges to extend higher education to displaced persons. There are civic engagement programs, and there are many that combine different elements. It's I'll invite my colleagues to jump in and sort of see if they can define sort of a key element, what is a success. I think it really is about the partnerships and the collaborations that the newer programs, again, because they came from primarily from faculty at the Central European University and Bard College, who have been running and developing and designing collaborations for many years. And so it was very much in line with what the OSUN network is trying to do. Sasha?
I just want to say, and I hope it's helpful. I was just looking at a concept just now that I was asked to give feedback on, and it's typical of many concepts that we've seen so far. You know, both coming from our own institutions, but also from other partners. When you put some resources on the table and say, at my institution, we have excellent expertise in this field, and this is a priority field for OSUN. At the other partner institution, there is matching expertise. So there are so many things we can do with this together. We can teach, we can research, we can do some public engagement, we can do, you know, we can do all sorts of things. And this is then presented as a concept. So it's more of a supply approach, where I think what OSUN is looking for is more of a purpose approach. We have a lot of excellent colleagues across OSUN networks and a lot of expertise in any field you can imagine. But what we're looking for is what are the new and interesting combinations that work towards specific purpose? What sense of mission the faculty, staff, colleagues share for which they see available resources? So if you formulate your concept, if you first think of the purpose, and I don't necessarily mean, you know, tangible, you know, outcomes that you know fit, you know, certain metrics. I'm talking about what really inspires you. What is the change that you think you can achieve or move towards if you put these new opportunities and, you know, different capacities across the network together. So purpose driven, I would say, would be better approach than supply driven.
Lauren asked, can a project be about expanding an existing program at one institution to include network partners? In principle, yes. And I think I just sort of follow the logic that Sasha just explained. If there's purpose, it's that, you know, it's not supply driven, but it's purpose driven. I think we've the management committee has looked at concepts similarly, you know, an interesting program at one institution proposing to expand to other institutions, and sometimes the committee will just say, well, find out, ask the other institutions if they're interested, and if there's interest, then we can support those collaborations. Tom, you have further question?
Thank you, Daniel, very much. And thank you, Sasha, for giving the example. And it's very heartening in our view, I think, that you were asked to comment on a project. And I'm sure that other people will also ask you, and certainly I think we will ask you. So I hope that would be okay for us to write to you and ask you about how we're doing, kind of thing, just a few comments. And then the secondary one is back to the business of civic engagement, because one of the important institutions of any civil society, of course, are universities themselves. And I wondered, for example, in the case of, we have Al-Quds, which is in Jerusalem, but then there are also other universities in Palestine, including Hebron and Bethlehem and so on. And sometimes the business of communicating between universities is quite difficult, especially in the present circumstances. So would you as a committee or the OSUN authorities welcome engagement with colleagues in other universities, obviously relating to colleagues in Al Quds, which is an OSUN partner already, but it doesn't exclude other universities, or is the question?
I answer it this way. The call for concepts is about building partnerships between and among current OSUN partner institutions. And programs can include partners outside of the network. And indeed, some of the new programs have involvement of universities that are not part of the network. But that is add-on. I mean, what the committee is looking for is really, what are the relationships, the partnerships that you will build within the network?
And just an additional point here, that access to education and the leadership of OSUN institutions in this movement to expand and diversify access is one of the objectives of OSUN. So if the vision here is to work with Al Quds University or Al Quds Bard College to empower and expand their capacity and improve their capacity for being local connectors, communicators, channels for access, then it would absolutely be relevant. And in that sense, we are not looking at, institutional identity of those who come through this access theme, because access is a very open concept for OSUN. To your question about the review, I can volunteer, a few minutes to take a look and give you feedback, but you should only take this as my personal opinion and not necessarily competent in the subjects and geographies that you're looking at. I can give you feedback from the point of view of OSUN, but actually that, I'm sure that you will get much more helpful feedback through the review by the OSUN Management Committee. Because again, this is built as an iterative process where a lot of ideas and cross-project or cross-partner connections are actually formulated during the discussion of the whole bulk of proposals by the management committee. So I can take a look and give you feedback on sort of the technical side of your approach from the point of view of OSUN, but you will definitely get feedback from the management committee.
Any other questions? Are there formatting rules for the one-page concept? No. One page, any format you like. But again, encouraging you to be very succinct and get right to the questions of why are we doing this? What are we proposing to do? What will come out of it? Christopher.
Well, yeah, do not try to squeeze a 3-page document into 1 page by decreasing the font and space between the lines.
Christopher.
I had a question about your connections generally with the United Nations and Sustainability Development Goals. I mean, obviously that is a big thing out of New York. Is there some kind of central contact point at BARD so we can understand which SDG networks you already connect with, maybe informally or sort of around all of your universities? Because it'd be nice if we could sort of work in sync on some of these things.
Bonnie, do you know who's?
So, Christopher, I just mentioned right to me, we do have within the OSUN network, one of our vice presidents for global affairs who sits on the UN Commission, UN High Refugee Commission. I'm getting the acronym wrong, but I think you know what I'm speaking of, and represents OSUN and the work that's going on with refugee education and issues. And that's probably the best place to start. I'm happy to make a connection with you. Her name is Rebecca Granado. And she is certainly our best person. So if anyone is interested in that, I put my email in the chat. You can write to me and I'll make a personal connection.
And just to follow up, I think my British compatriot Malik Brown is actually still on the global board of OSUN, and as you probably know, he actually wrote up the Millennial Goals as of 2000, not the SDGs. But I mean, there is huge depth of connectivity between your networks and the UN. So I think any way that you can sort of update the exciting parts of that as they connect with the things that inspire your curriculum helps everyone see how important the whole scope of everything you can connect is out of New York and everywhere.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have just put in the chat our email contact applications at opensocietyuniversity.network. Well, opensocietyuniversitynetwork.org. I invite you to, if you have further questions, feel free to email us. And we look forward to many interesting new ideas, and we'll see what we can develop from there. Sorry, a couple other questions. Can salaries be funded? Is co-funding possible? For national programs, for example, are there rules, guidelines for participation of academic partners from beyond OSUN? For the participation of partners, again, the OSUN is looking for partnerships between and among current OSUN member institutions. A program can include partners outside of the network, but let's say the concepts will be evaluated based on the partnerships within the network. In terms of budget, OSUN will support, or think of it this way, the OSUN will support collaborations. So it can support salaries, travel, whatever expenses to facilitate the collaborations between institutions. What it will not fund is institutional infrastructure, let's say existing programs, because we're looking to what can OSUN add to what you are already doing, or funds that are basically of benefit only to one institution. So there aren't sort of specific line items that can or can't be in your budget, but really think of it in terms of what are the funds that I would need and my partners would need to build the kind of collaboration that would fit well into the network. Any other last questions?
Daniel, may I just add one comment, which
Yes.
I know several of you had asked and we put in the chat box about joining OSUN Connects. I do want to say, I like to think of OSUN Connects right now as a new group that's kind of like going to a junior high, middle school dance where people stand around the edge and wait for somebody else to get on the dance floor. The dance floor will only work if you all take the risk and get out there. So please, when you join the group, introduce yourself, share your area of interest, allow other people to connect with you. That's the whole purpose of it. And we hope to see comments and interest from many of you, the kind of things that you've shared in the chat today. Please bring it to OSUN Connects. We appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. And again, email us with any further questions, and we look forward to seeing your concepts.